الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين وصلى الله على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد
صل على محمد
الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن الناس من يشري نفسه ابتغاء مرضات الله والله رؤوف بالعباد صدق الله العلي العظيم. Yesterday evening we discussed some of the points about this ayat of Holy Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 207, which talks about people who sacrifice themselves for the pleasure of Allah. And I mentioned for you all that sacrifice is not only a sacrifice of life, which is the ultimate sacrifice, but sacrifice is also one of your own egos and your desires and yourself coming into the middle of everything you are doing. That our selfish or self-interest or our egos come into whatever we are doing, and that's what basically tarnishes everything, contaminates or messes up whatever we are doing. In the life of Mullah Ali, which we should never compare ourselves with Imam Ali in any way, nor should we think that when we are talking about Imam Ali alayhi salam, we are in any position to describe him or understand his personality, like in terms of like encompassing all aspects of his personality, even to list some areas of his greatness takes a lifetime. But what we should do is to follow the path that he led for us. In terms of Isar is to prefer others over yourself. In the dictionary of Imam Ali alayhi salam, the interest of the society and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is paramount. What's more important is his duty, his responsibility, not his role or what he gets out of it, or whether he achieves any success or not. But it is the duty in that moment that is the most important one. That what is it that he should be doing in that particular moment? That if people were to follow Imam Ali alayhi salam and just take care of their responsibilities in that moment, we will not be so far behind in everything. And the zuhur of Imam alayhi salam, zuhur of Imam Zaman alayhi salam would not have been delayed. It is this lagging behind, it is this neglect of our responsibilities that has caused all our misfortunes. I will continue with some of the examples in Imam Ali's life in how he sacrificed his ego, his wishes, his own personal, his self basically, in the line of his duty, the performance of his duty. And I made reference to the fact that he slept at the bed of the Holy Prophet that night of Hijrat, but I will expand on that in some other examples. If we look at the life of Mullah Ali alayhi salam, we see that, as we mentioned yesterday, that from age 9 to 63, it's a straight line of Ithar, where he does not seem to present himself like I matter something, like I should be in the position, I should be ahead of things, at the helm of affairs, for example. Rather, he wanted to promote the message and safeguard the interests of Islam and safeguard the people. That was more important. He openly declared his support for the Holy Prophet when he was 13 years old. And he took upon himself the responsibility of defending the Holy Prophet in Mecca until the time of Hijrat came, where the Holy Prophet had to leave, and he asked Imam Ali if he could sleep in his bed. And Maula Ali asked the Holy Prophet, if I sleep in your bed, will you be safe? Will you be able to, escape this danger? And the Holy Prophet said yes. And Maula Ali did not think twice, and he lay down. Basically, and the words of a Christian author, he was like a Socrates, who drank the portion of poison for the sake of truth and society. Then Maula Ali alayhi salam sacrificed himself that night as if there was nothing more. And we would probably have, if that Allah had not saved him, we would not have had anything after that. That was the night Imam Ali basically gave everything. And that night was not the way we look at it now, because we know that he survived, so we can't fully understand what was going on there. The house was surrounded, there were spies everywhere, and they were tracing the movements. And Maula Ali alayhi salam stayed in that bed until they attacked the house. Now, the way it turned out was that they saw inside the bed that there was Imam Ali, not was the Holy Prophet. And the fact that they actually looked to see who was there, that's itself a question, because what if they had just attacked and cut him to pieces? But as in the books of Hadith, we find that on that night, Allah summoned Jibreel and Mikael, and he asked Jibreel and Mikael, which one of you is willing to die for the other? None of the two were willing to die for the other. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, look at my servant Ali, who is giving his life for my Habib, for my Prophet. So now go and save him, protect him. Allah determines the causes, the asbab, the means for achieving anything. At one point, he might save humanity from him in the hands of Imam Ali. At another time, he might want his angels to serve Imam Ali alayhi salam. In any case, see, that night, Imam Ali's person does not come in the picture. See, he's not thinking about future, that, okay, this is the night of migration. Now, after 13 years of struggle, finally, we are able to escape towards rahat, comfort, towards success. We will have our own government, we will have power, influence, and I will be able to assume a certain role after migration. No, he's not thinking about any of that. He's just thinking, okay, tonight is the night where I can do my duty, and it will be such an honor for me if I can die for this Prophet, for the Prophet of Allah. You move further, you will see that after migration, Allah saved Imam Ali alayhi salam. He migrated later on, joined the Prophet in Tuba and then into Medina. Well, you see that I think it took within a year, the battles started. In the 10 years of the life of the Holy Prophet in Medina, there were more than 80 battles, 82 battles, I remember, I think, at least 82 or more than 82 battles, out of which 27 battles the Holy Prophet personally took part in. And in the rest of the battles, almost all of them, Maula Ali alayhi salam was present. So you see, like with about 10 years with 82 battles. Some of them were major wars and encounters where like the major armies of all the Quraysh and the Muslims were all into each other. So that we are talking about a city in which like Maula Ali, Sayyidah Fatima Salamullah Alaiha, and then their children, Imam Hassan and Hussein and Zainab Salamullah Alaiha, they are growing up with with war going on around them, injured people, dead bodies, and shuhada, and preparations for war, and hue and cry, and fear of enemies surrounding Medina, uh, and receiving news of Hamza getting killed, or even in Battle of Uhud, the news spread that Rasulullah had died, had been killed in the Battle of Uhud. The rumor spread rather. So that where Sayyida Fatima, she in that emergency, she left for perhaps the only time where she left the city with some other women, I understand, to provide, like the nurses do, like today we have paramedics, like she came together over there on the battle scene where all the injured were laying on the ground, and the more than 70 shaheed in their battlefield looking for her father, and Imam Ali alayhi salam, who was injured to the extent that, he had many wounds on his body. He had broken 2 swords, and Zulfiqar was given to him. And Mawla Ali alayhi salam, when he gave that Zulfiqar to Sayyida Fatima, he said that take care of this sword, that because it was stained with blood, that she would wash it and all that. He said that this, something to this, meaning that this sword has really done its duty to me, like done whatever was required of it. In that situation, you imagine that the Ahlul Bayt have lived through these times. Sayyidah Zainab, in her childhood, she has seen battles after battle, battles after battle. Fatma Salamullah was deep into all these events going on around her. Salamullah alayha. Mawla Ali alayhi salam was the commander, was the leader of all the battles, commander who ran the scene of the battle. And he himself mentions, وَلَقَدْ وَاسَيْتُهُ بِنَفْسِي. Wasa in Arabic, muwasat means you give to the other what you would love for yourself. And in terms of life, everyone loves his life. So Rasulullah, Imam Ali said, I give him my life. Wasaituhu walaqad wasaituhu binafsi. With my life, I stood with him. Fil mawatin allati tankusu fiha al-abtal. In places, I stood with the Prophet where the biggest of champions, their legs start trembling and shaking. And they retreat. In places there, the most strongest of men in those situations would leave the ground and would retreat and would escape and run, and would not be able to withstand the pressure of the circumstance. But I stood with the Prophet. What was he doing there? Mawla Ali alayhi salam saw himself alone with the Prophet. Everyone else escaped in the Battle of Uhud. Some of them, few came back, and then much later, some others came back. Mawla Ali alayhi salam was the only one. He became like the Sipar-e Bala, the shield that protected the life of Holy Prophet. He was on foot and he was fighting cavalry. Like hordes of these, horsemen would attack the Holy Prophet, and Mawla Ali is on the ground fighting with a sword in his hand, will bring down these men, attacking armies or soldiers from their horses. And basically, that's how it's unbelievable. It's unthinkable how a human being could do that. And in that battle, Mawla Ali alayhi salam cried when that battle was over. When he said to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, I did not become a shaheed. I did not become a shaheed. Allah did not honor me with shahadat today. And when he cried so much, the Holy Prophet finally gave him the news of his shahadat at a later occasion. This is not your place, Ali. Your shahadat will occur in the month of Ramadan, in the Ibadat. The details are in the hadith. what is about Shahadat that Imam Ali alayhi salam, despite all his greatness, all his achievements, all his virtues, his zuhud, his knowledge, his all the human greatness, highest of best of traits that he had, and he's hungry for Shahadat. We have to ask ourselves, Mawla Ali's greatness, that means the greatness of Shahadat is something else. He wanted to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a martyr. So in that situation, you see that he is always stepping ahead of everyone else, never thinking about what might happen tomorrow, that Islam needs me tomorrow, Rasulullah needs me. No, today, Islam is truly in danger and Rasulullah's life is in danger. And my duty today is to step forward. In the battle of Khandaq, the same thing. Amr ibn Abdawad crossed that trench with a few men and he challenged the whole Muslim army, anyone to come out. Amr ibn Abdawad is a champion of Arab, Jaziratul Arab. His name causes terror, He was alone like an army. And he challenges the Muslims and no one responds. Only one young man, one man in the whole Muslim army of 3,000 or so, only one person even responded. That was Mawla Ali. And the Holy Prophet asked him to wait and sit down, and no one else responded. History says that it was like there were birds sitting on their heads, which means that they would sit frozen still. No one seemed like they actually existed over there. They played dead as if like they were dead even before they did anything. And Mawla Ali would stand up and say, Ana lahu, I am for this champion. And he stepped forward. And it was a difficult moment for Rasulullah, a difficult moment. And he made a dua to this, meaning something like saying that, oh Allah, in the battle of Uhud, in the battle of Badr, you took Abu Ubaidah from us. In the battle of Uhud, we lost Hamza. Oh Allah, protect Ali today in this battle. Then he said, today the whole of Iman is going out against the whole of Kufr. And then Mawla Ali alayhi salam, the dust rose, no one could see what was going on. The next thing they heard was a takbir, where Salman was apparently sitting next to the Holy Prophet. He gave the news to the Holy Prophet. And then that, that ikhlas, that fidakari, that ithar, self-sacrifice for the cause of Islam, knowing his duty in that moment without a moment of delay, giving all he had, everything. And see that, as you remember, you must have heard all this before, that when Mawla Ali killed him, he stepped away from that body, He didn't take his armor or sword or anything. Now he knows, that he didn't care about these things, first of all, and he didn't do it for this reason either. He was not concerned about what he was wearing, how much the value of whatever, but he considered that beneath him, do anything like that. His sister, Amr ibn Abdul's sister, came to the janazah of her brother and she refused to cry on his janazah because he said, when she asked who killed my brother, and they said Ali ibn Abi Talib, she said, I would have cried for you if it was not for who killed you. Especially seeing that his body and with his armor and all his valuable things, the sword and everything was left on the battlefield untouched. Because Mawla Ali alayhi salam, he did it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is this sense of duty for Allah where, in the words of Masumin alayhi salam, jihad has been termed as وَضَرْبَةُ سِنَامِهِ al-jihad. The peak of Islamic practices, the highest Islamic duty is jihad. The power of Islam, the respect of Islam is, the honor of Islam is protected through jihad. That if I will, perhaps tomorrow I will read some of the portion of sermons of Mawla Ali, and he talks about jihad and how he presents that subject, which is so important in his eyes. So you see that all his life, after 25 years, now we move further into after the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he did not let himself come in the middle. He was not concerned about himself. Saqifa happened, they put Abu Bakr in charge, and there are many things about history, 6 months Mawla Ali was in silence. And in that 6 months, a lot took place. Sayyidah Fatima was killed, and her house was attacked, and she became sick, and Fadak was taken from Ahlul Bayt, and a lot of other things happened. Mawla Ali removed himself, distanced himself from whatever they were doing. But after 6 months, when he saw that Medina was in danger, that these some people had left Islam, the battles of Ridda, we call them. Some people had left Islam. There were some who declared themselves as prophets. There were several names in history. Aswad Ansi, Musailama, and other names. I think there were other names. Different tribes had people declaring themselves, claiming that they were prophets. And they were bringing their tribes with them and raising armies to attack Medina. When Mawla Ali saw that Islam is in danger, and that danger is there because of the rift between Muslims, in the heart of Islamic world, Islamic power, the center in Medina, there were different groups now. There were many who were against the Khilafat of Abu Bakr. There were many with Imam Ali. There were some with Sa'd ibn Ubadah. Medina is split. The Bay'at has been taken by force. People have shown their support to the first Khalifa out of fear, or bribe, or self-interest, or whatever it was. It was a very confusing situation in Medina, and the people outside could see that. But the different tribes in Arabia who had just accepted Islam out of the fear of Islam, the central government in Medina had overpowered all the opposition. So they had accepted Islam, and they had started paying zakat or jizya, whatever was their responsibility. But when they saw that there was division in Islam, they saw there was split in Medina, and there were different groups. There were obviously all the news came out from Saqifa. In Saqifa also there was a fight between different groups, and those who came and took bay'at, again they were opponents. There were some who were forced to give bay'at, but they were against them. So this encouraged all the enemies of Islam to come together once again, like Battle of Ahzab, preparing to raise an army and preparing to wage a war against Islam. Mawla Ali saw this as a threat to Islam itself. Well, obviously, if that Islam was more important to him than his own Khilafat. But now imagine, like, these are people, this group of people who have usurped power. What have they done to his wife? What have they done to everything? What are they doing every day? But when he sees Islam in danger, he steps forward, he gets involved again in political affairs. And something he calls Wizarat. We should not use the meaning in Urdu sense or whatever. Wizarat, he calls himself, see, even later on when he was asked to become a Khalifa, he says, I am better off for you, I'm better as a Wazir than as a Khalifa. So he became a person who would give good advice good counsel to those who were leading the show, because they were constantly making big blunders, and that would cost Islam heavily in future. Maula Ali tried to straighten them, tried to bring them back on track, correct their mistakes. He got involved, gave valuable advice in times. And again, he joined forces with the government, because against these enemies of Islam who had turned away from Islam, this battle of Ridda started. That was one reason. The other reason was, and this is into research, I was reading some research on this subject, that when the first Khalifa, he announced jihad against these Murtaddin, actually many of them were not Murtad. They were still Muslims. They did not change their faith. They were only refusing to give zakat. And many of them were refusing to give zakat for the main reason that they did not accept Abu Bakr as the Khalifa. They were on the side of Imam Ali alayhi salam. That's why they refused to give zakat. They said basically, you know, we are Muslims, we read kalima, we do salat, everything, but we don't want to give our zakat to you. That reminds me of the situation in Pakistan where Ziaul Haq Lanatullah, he was trying to collect zakat from people, and Shias stood up and said, we are not going to give zakat because we are not going to give zakat to you because we don't accept Ziaul Haq as the Amir al-Mu'mineen. And again, people who did not accept Abu Bakr as the Amir al-Mu'mineen, they refused to pay zakat. And Abu Bakr, when he saw that the Medina was divided and there was big opposition against him, he used that challenge of the irtidad as an opportunity to unite the people against a common enemy. So the reason Abu Bakr waged the jihad against these Murtaddin actually was not because they were Murtad. Some of them were, but many of them were just against Abu Bakr himself, not against Islam. But he used that, he exploited that situation to draw the attention of all the opposition and everyone and bring all of them on one page, as if, you know, when there's a threat from outside, all the people, they come together and they put aside their differences. So that's what he did. But for Maula Ali, it was important that many of those people who were in opposition to the Khalifa would not be targeted. And they were innocent people. They were refusing to pay zakat, but they were not kuffar. So he wanted to make sure that no harm is done, no injustice is done to anyone in the name of jihad. You see? See, this corruption starts from day one. This corruption in Islam. And Abu Bakr was mentioning ahadith that were jali hadith. He says that the Holy Prophet said, I stood up with this mission of Islam for the sake of kalima and salat and zakat. So he made up his own thing, that as if someone is not giving zakat, that means I'm supposed to fight him. Many Sahaba actually gave counsel to the first Khalifa that you should not fight them. Give them exemption from zakat for a year. Some of them are actually in need. They don't have the capacity to pay zakat right now. Give them a break. We don't have to fight them. But he insisted that we should all gather and wage a war against these people, all opposition outside of Medina, all these tribes. Basically, he wanted to make a common enemy and bring all his own opposition on one page and involve them and divert their attention away from himself. That was the idea. So, and it was in a very cruel manner. See, Khalid bin Walid, Lanatullah alayh, he had killed one of the important persons. His name was Malik ibn Nuwaira. And on the same night, he committed adultery with his wife. And history records that he killed this man. He put his head in some kind of a big pot, and he forcibly committed adultery with his wife. And this Khalid bin Walid was forgiven by Abu Bakr. and then later on by Omar as well. This is what's happened. In this kind of a situation, Maula Ali comes back into this picture and it gets involved again. It's not easy for us to understand all this. See, Imam Ali is telling us perhaps that there's no black and white only in a situation. It's not like you are either with someone or you are fighting him. No, there's sometimes you have to not agree with someone and still try to correct it by involving yourself in a situation. Instead of fighting, you have to involve yourself to correct the damage, like damage control. Try to correct the situation, try to make the best of whatever you have so the situation does not keep getting worse every day. And that support that Maula Ali gave to Islam on that day basically helped the situation a lot. Otherwise, these people would have completely destroyed everything for their own personal gain. Because if they had, let's say if they had provoked the people into more and more opposition, what would have happened? So this is another example of that. Another example of Isar of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wasalam. Please recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa
محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
When the second Khalifa was killed, he appointed a shura. When he was, before his death, he appointed a shura of 6 members. And among these 6 members, Maula Ali also was chosen as one of them. And this 6-member council had to choose one of them as the next Khalifa, as the 3rd Khalifa. There was Usman in there was Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, there was Sa'd ibn Waqas, and Zubair. So there were 6 people there. Okay, so Maula Ali alayhi salam had Zubair with him. Zubair was in support of Maula Ali. Usman had Talha with him. Talha. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf had Sa'd ibn Waqas with him. So Sa'd ibn Waqas was with Abdul Rahman ibn Auf. Talha was with Usman, and Zubair was with Imam Ali. So from between the 6 people, this is how the votes were divided. But the deciding vote was Abdul Rahman ibn Auf. So there was a split. So Talha was with Usman, Zubair is with Imam Ali. So we are left with Abdul Rahman ibn Auf and Sa'd ibn Waqas. So Sa'd ibn Waqas will vote for the person that Abdul Rahman ibn Auf will choose. So Abdul Rahman ibn Auf turned towards Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, and he said that would you commit to following the book of Allah, Sunnat of Rasulullah, and the Seerah of Shaykhain? Will you follow the Seerah of the first 2 Khalifas? Maula Ali said, no. I will follow the book of Allah. I will follow the Sunnat of Rasulullah. I have nothing to do with the Seerah of Shaykhain. In fact, I will do my own ijtihad. I will act by my own ijtihad. Maula Ali could have just said, yes, I will. He was being offered Khilafat. He was the most popular among these 6 people, most capable, most acceptable. He was the best candidate among all these 6 people. Everybody knew that. Last 2 Khalifas, what they had done, everybody had seen. He would have been very easily chosen. With a one single yes, he could have become a Khalifa. No, he did not accept those terms. He said, I will not follow their. No, he will not do that. For his personal gain, for even the fact that he deserved to be the Khalifa in the first place. But he refused to show any flexibility, refused to compromise on principles. And he lost the Khilafat. He lost it. But his ego never came forward, was never seen. So the Khilafat was given to Osman. Obviously, he agreed that yes, I will follow Kitab al-Khuda, which we never did. Sunnat Rasulullah, which he had no clue what that was. And Sirah Shaykhan, he just lied because he couldn't care less. First of all, he wasn't from Bani Umayyah, so he wanted to bring his own clan. He had this long ambition of Abu Sufyan in his head that Bani Umayyah should regain the control of Arabia and outside this expanding power. Abu Sufyan was controlling Makkah. They wanted to get it back in the name of Islam. So Usman came to power. Many years passed. All the corruption which spread, everything that went wrong. In the end, people just got fed up, sick and tired of this, and they came to Maula Ali alayhi salam. He was not even in Medina. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, when the house of Usman was surrounded by these rebels and all these people who had come from Yemen and Misr and Iraq and all over Hijaz, there was a huge, massive revolt against the central Khalifa because of the corruption that was rampant everywhere. So Maula Ali tried to protect Usman. He brought Hassan and Hussein alayhi salam also to protect them. I think we are almost running out of time. So obviously, one point, obviously Imam Ali alayhi salam did not want this to become a sunnah that people, if they are not happy with some Khalifa, they will come and kill and destroy everything and then use force to change power. Transition of power, use force for transition of power. Also because if for example, if that had not happened and Osman had agreed to the terms of these people who are outside the public, basically, there was a possible improvement in the affairs to be expected, because maybe Osman, obviously he had to agree to the terms of these people, the demands of these people. In that case, he would have deposed all the people he had appointed, including Muawiyah, would all have been removed from their places. And if that had happened, we would not have seen the battles that happened afterwards, Jamal and Siffin and Nahrawan, that Muawiyah was behind all of these things. But because people just, they, instead of coming to a resolution with the opposition, Usman was killed by some of the individuals there that involved Talha and Marwan and perhaps other people as well. All of these people who came against Maula Ali in the Battle of Jamal were actually involved. These leaders of this opposition, they were actually involved in the murder of Usman. Again, so here we have a situation where Imam Ali is defending the Khalifa, who is a corrupt person, not because he is defending him, but rather he wants to do it. See, we want to understand it this way, that Maula Ali alayhi salam could have capitalized, exploited that situation very easily, like Aisha was doing. The general dissatisfaction of people against the government, Maula Ali could have used it in his favor and said, okay, we overthrow this government and I take power in my hands. No, instead, he did not want that. He wanted a proper transition of power, a peaceful transition of power, the way it should be held. So the first bay'at after Rasulullah, there was the first popular bay'at that happened after Ghadir Khum was the bay'at that was done for Maula Ali Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salatu wassalam. Salawat. Allahumma sallallahu. But just a few words about remembering this night of the 20th. Maula Ali, who was craving for shahadat in the battle of Uhud with all the wounds on his body, he was crying, Ya Rasulullah, I did not become a shaheed. Allah did not grant me shahadat. The Holy Prophet told Maula Ali that your shahadat is to come later. It is narrated that in this Ramadan, the Ramadan in which Maula Ali was killed, he asked one day, he was on the pulpit, he was on the mimbar, and Maula Hassan and Hussein was sitting in front of him on the floor below the mimbar. He asked his son, Hassan, how many days of Ramadan have passed? And he said 17 days. Then he said, asked Imam Hussein, how many days of Ramadan are left? Imam Hussein said something like 13 days. Then he held his beard with his hand and he said, this is this month. I have not been lied to, and this effect. But he said that this is the month in which this beard will turn red from the blood of my head. And finally, the morning came when Maula Ali was struck with a sword in the mosque of Kufa. Many of you must have seen the videos from Kufa, how people these days are crying like they've lost their father. It was the same situation when Maula Ali was struck. People came out crying that the Rawi says it was like the day when Rasulullah had died. This is how the people of Kufa lost their father. Maula Ali was taking care of every single person in Kufa. Where will these orphans go? Who will help these orphans? Situation, how would the future be like after Maula Ali? What is to become of Islam? What is to become of Muslims after the killing of Maula Ali alayhi salam? Try to imagine the situation in the house of Imam Ali with Zainab and Kulthum. Then Maula Ali is surrounded by his children who are crying, and Maula Ali is crying with them because he could not hold his tears looking at his daughters. The doctor was called to look at the wound on his head, and he said that, oh Ali, make your wasiyat, because this poison has reached your brain and it has spread all over the body. Asbagh ibn Labata says, I came into the house and I saw Maula Ali. His head was wrapped with a yellow cloth, and his face was also turned yellow because of the wound and the injury. And he said, I could not make a difference between the yellow scarf on his head and the color of his face. Maula Ali alayhi salatu wasalam is preparing himself to leave this world, and all his daughters are around, and Maula is concerned that the voice of crying of his daughters be heard on the street. I will say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, if you were present in Karbala, you would have seen how Zainab was taken as a prisoner from Karbala to Kufa and Kufa to Sham, and how Zainab would turn towards Najaf when she was taken into the court of Ibn Ziyad and in the court of Yazid Lanatullah alayhi, ala lanatullah ala al-qawm al-zalimin, wa sayalamu alladhina zalamu ayyam qalbun yanqalimun. Oh Allah, accept our ibadat in this month of Ramadan. Make us among the Zaireen of Maula Ali, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Najaf Ashraf, and give us of ziyarat of Tawfiq of Karbala. Allah ala Muhammadin wa alihi wa